Hello again, I'm Kelly McCullen. The race for North Carolina's Attorney General will be decided on the November ballot. Republican Jim O'Neill is challenging Democrat and current Attorney General Josh Stein, who joins us for our first conversation. Hello, Mr. Stein.
Kelly, always a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Well, we've done this a time or two in the past. However, since we last did this, thousands of people have moved to North Carolina and will be voting for you or your challenger. Who is Josh Stein? What do you bring to the table?
I am the Attorney General of North Carolina. I was elected back in 2016, and I love this job of serving as the people's Attorney General. Every day I get to go to work with very talented, dedicated folks to protect the people of this state in so many different ways. We protect families by combating crime, eliminating the backlog of untested sexual assault kits and making sure it never develops again, protecting kids from child sex abusers, fighting against domestic violence, combating the opioid epidemic. It's been one of the biggest issues I've worked on, and I've enjoyed the opportunities to be with you and others at UNC TV talking about that issue. But we do more than that. We protect seniors and vulnerable people from scam artists and robocallers, ensuring that our natural resources are beautiful, the air that we breathe and water we drink is safe and clean for people, protecting folks' fundamental rights like the right to vote, the right to be free from discrimination. So these are issues I have been working on as the Attorney General of North Carolina, and these are issues I will continue to work on if reelected.
Now, you worked under then Attorney General Roy Cooper, if I'm not mistaken, but becoming the AG of this state 4 years ago, of all the issues from price gouging to opioids, which issue surprised you the most? Which one have you been most successful at combating? And which ones are, nerve-wracking? You just can't seem to get your hand around it and get this thing under control.
Yeah. I feel like we've made the most progress on eliminating the backlog of untested sexual assault kits. When I came into this office, we really didn't know how many kits were sitting on the shelves of local law enforcement across the state. And so the legislature helped me, forcing the local law enforcement to give us a count. And the number we got was incredibly distressing. It was 15,000 untested sexual assault kits, some of them 10, 20, 30 years old, just sitting on evidence shelves. So we then attacked that problem. I went out and raised $4 million in grant funds because we couldn't get any money out of the legislature initially. But then I want to thank the General Assembly because they passed my bill, the Survivor Act, giving us $6 million so we can outsource all of those kits. But the legislature did a couple of other important things. One, they backed my tracking system. You know, you can track your Domino's pizza delivery, but a person, a victim who submitted 2 hours of invasive evidence collection, never knew what happened to the kit, had no idea where it was, and couldn't get an answer. Now they have a barcode and they will know exactly where that kit is, and that transparency will increase the accountability of our criminal justice system. So we will make sure once we've cleared this backlog, it never develops in North Carolina again.
How does that happen, in your opinion? Was it the system failing? Was it widespread corruption? Was it incompetence? Or was it just bad government?
It was a combination of things. Things like a problem this big doesn't have a single source. There's a lieutenant from Fayetteville, Lieutenant Summerdike. He headed their sexual crimes unit. And he said, he's been doing this work for many years. He's just recently retired. He said when he did this work initially, and a victim would tell their story, and if there was any inconsistency in the story, he wouldn't really believe them. He now understands the science of trauma and how that will affect a victim's ability to recall and relay what happened. It's not like a linear movie. It's more snapshots. And so part of it is we just understand the science better. Part of it is the science of DNA is so much better. We can get a profile from such a microscopic amount, whereas 15, 20 years ago, we never would have been able to get a profile. And then the third factor is the database of people we're comparing it to is way larger. When I was in the Senate, I dramatically increased the size of the database, almost doubled it, because we included felony arrestees on that database. So now the likelihood of getting a hit from testing the DNA is so much stronger. So the evidentiary value is way better than it used to be. So part of it was cultural, part of it was science. Whatever it is, I'm less concerned about how we got here. is ensuring that we address this problem and make sure it never happens again.
Another area where folks will see a lot of the Attorney General in a high-profile setting during hurricanes, price gouging. We've seen other AGs pop out and warn about overcharging for gas. Is that something that is going to always need spot addressing because every hurricane will bring gouging out? Or can you create a climate in this state where businesses and scam artists don't try it in the first place?
You've hit the nail on the head, Kelly. Our job in enforcing the law is to, one, go after the wrongdoers, but two, send a very clear signal to sellers: do not try to take advantage of people's desperation. We have hurricanes in North Carolina. We're currently in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. There is a state of emergency, and North Carolina law says when there is a state of emergency, it's unlawful for a seller to try to exploit that, to charge an unreasonably excessive price. When they do, I will aggressively enforce the law. After the hurricanes, we brought something like 8 different lawsuits against 22 different defendants, and we're working through those cases. We've resolved them, about 7 of the cases, and about 16 of the defendants, and we've recovered nearly $1 million back for North Carolina consumers. And just in this crisis, the coronavirus crisis, I brought 2 price gouging lawsuits so far.
I'm not well versed on my history of Attorney General. I have to admit that. However, under the last 4 years under your term, I've noticed a lot of states, their Attorney Generals, or Attorneys General, I think is the right term, are filing lawsuits fighting the federal government. It started with the Obama administration, is continued with you taking some actions to sue the Trump administration. How does that role work when the state goes after the federal government over a controversy?
Sure. My job is to protect the people of North Carolina and protect them against any person, business, or entity that's causing harm to the people, our state, our values. And so there are instances when this administration has taken steps that is damaging to North Carolina. For instance, the Trump administration and Republican attorneys general, they are trying to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. Not only are they trying to eliminate it, they're trying to eliminate it in the middle of a public health pandemic. They are trying to strip health insurance from 20 million Americans, a million North Carolinians. They're trying to take away lower prescription drug prices for seniors. They're trying to take away protections for people who have pre-existing conditions. And by the way, Kelly, there are more than 4 million North Carolinians with a pre-existing condition. They're trying to take away the protections from being discriminated against by insurance companies. It's beyond the pale, and it's without the law. They're doing it without legal basis to do so. So my job is to protect the people regardless of who's harming them. The Trump administration is trying to put oil rigs off of our shore. I will contest that. He is trying to weaken our government's most effective responses to the climate crisis, the Clean Power Plan, the Clean Car Standards. These are things that hurt the public health of the people of North Carolina and worsen the impact of hurricanes and flooding on eastern North Carolina. That's why I've taken these actions. I'm not doing this because I relish these fights. I do it because it's the right thing to do for North Carolina.
Same goes with your relationship with the North Carolina General Assembly. There have been lawsuits filed where you've remained silent, or sometimes you jump and help. How do you determine when you'll represent the state in the General Assembly, when you will not?
Generally, my job is to defend the state. And the standard isn't whether I like what the state has done. It's not whether I agree as a matter of policy. It's whether that's just my job. So I will defend the state even when I disagree with it because it's my client. But if whatever they have done is unconstitutional, then I will not. So my fidelity and my oath is to the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of North Carolina, and the laws of North Carolina. And that's how I determine what I will do. It's not based on my personal preferences.
Do you see this type of legal activity across America, even in North Carolina, continuing or increasing between 2021 and 2024?
I don't know. I'm not that wise. Definitely, we're in a partisan moment, and I think it's unhealthy. I think that there's too much. One side does something, so the other side immediately does something. My standard is it lawful or not? And if it isn't, does it hurt the people of North Carolina or not? If the answer is yes, that's when I take action.
Is there anything or any program that you have not yet had an opportunity to launch that you would launch if given another term?
I am working, I've been part of the executive committee of 2 well, I won't get too specific, but it has to do with big tech, the major technology companies. And their size and their scope and their impact on our lives, the amount of information they have about us, the lack of concern they have demonstrated about our privacy, the amount of power they have over competitors, which can impair our ability to benefit from new ideas, new technologies, new programs. I am really concerned about that, and we're in kind of early days of investigations. This is a bipartisan effort of attorneys general from across the country, and so I think that's going to be a much higher profile issue if I get a second term. But the other work, fighting robocalls, ending this backlog of sexual assault kits, the opioid epidemic, sadly, this coronavirus pandemic has worsened the problem, not helped it. So it's not like the work that I have been doing ends on December 31st, 2020. A lot of the initiatives I have been working on, I want to continue because I want to see real, meaningful change.
I want to finish up with our last minute here. Let's talk about the opioid crisis. Is it still a major problem for our state, or has the state gotten its arms around the issue from the distribution standpoint, and we can start looking at better days for addiction and for opioid misuse?
We actually were in that place in 2019. We had a 10% decline in opioid overdose deaths, a huge accomplishment. But the coronavirus pandemic has erased all of those gains. The isolation, the job loss, the depression, we've seen a spike in opioid overdose deaths. So it's very tragic. I am leading the national effort of attorneys general, every single one in the country, 56 including the district and the territories, bipartisan effort to hold the drug distributors and drug manufacturers accountable. And we're working hard. We're trying to bring this to a close. My view is those who created this crisis must help us clean it up. And I think they need to pay billions so that we can help people who are struggling get through this crisis, learn to live in recovery, and have a happy life just like the rest of us.
Is that justice? Do you see that years in the coming, or a decade or more in the coming?
My hope is that the resolution is weeks in the coming.
Weeks in the coming.
The work, however, will be years in the coming because this is a deep-seated problem, and we're not going to flip a switch and make it go away.
Attorney General Josh Stein, thank you so much for the conversation. The voters will cast their ballot, and I know you want their support. Thanks for joining us for this show.
Kelly, pleasure.